Hamish Milne is Professor of Piano at the Royal Academy of Music here in London and also Professor at the University of London. He's renowned for his interpretation of less familiar romantic repertoire, and I'm delighted that he's joined me here today at Jaques Samuel Pianos for a classical conversation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure to chat to you. I want to start by asking all about your musical education, how old you were when you started to play, what was the catalyst, whether you come from a musical family?
Yes, my father was a music teacher actually, so there was music in the house all the time, you know. Both me and my brother, we started the piano at about 7, which is quite late these days actually.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
It was post-war years, so you know, things weren't that easy, so that's probably why we started so late.
Yes, but it doesn't matter.
No,
not
at all. No.
Go on to do great things starting even later than that.
Well, it was a great advantage. I mean, there was music in the house all the time.
Yeah, sure. So, which teacher then do you think was crucial in your development as a pianist?
Well, I studied with Harold Craxton at the Royal Academy. He was probably the most well-known teacher around at that time. And then, completely by accident, I studied for 2 years with Guido Agosti in Italy. I intended to go to Russia, actually. It was Cold War days, and actually the scholarship was cancelled about 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave, which is why I ended up in Italy. But it was very positive, actually, because I had a wonderful time with Agosti.
Yeah. So how did you develop your technique? I always love to ask this question. Everyone's so
well, I didn't go through the mill in the sense that, you know, a lot of the French or Russian pianists have of exercises. Mr. Craxton used to recommend Berenger's exercises, and later on I found Dochniani's finger exercises,
yes,
which are very economical. Somehow you seem to get away with doing more with less work. But,
yes.
So I mean, there was a time when I did play them every day, actually, but that was a long time ago.
But you specialised in less familiar romantic repertoire. Why? How did this come about? What makes you really interested in this genre?
Well, I mean, I'm a professional and I play what I'm asked to play, basically. I think, and I think I probably got known for it because of my incursions into Medna, especially, and therefore I got associated with this kind of music. But actually, when I played chamber music, in a way, I probably prefer to play classical music, actually. So,
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a solo.
Yes, it seems to be. It just seems to be the tag. I remember when there was a lot of music on Radio 3, I was always being asked to learn, you know, obscure, enormous romantic concertos.
Yes, yes, I noticed that. Yeah, but Nikolai Medtner, how did this come about? This interest, and how long have you been?
Again, it was a complete accident. It was when Robert Simpson was at the BBC. He asked me to learn this enormous sonata, so-called Night Wind Sonata. And I didn't really know the music, and I got some huge volumes out of the library, and found myself turning the pages, you know, beyond the piece I was supposed to learn, and from that time I was completely hooked.
So what was the reason, do you think? What really draws you to his music?
Well, I don't know, he's such a complete... I mean, I'm often asked this question, it's quite hard to answer, but I find him actually such a complete composer, so absolutely superlative craftsman, but there's something just deep in the music. That sounds a bit corny, I know, but I mean, I can't think of a better way to express it. It has some sort of philosophical content. And although he writes in what for his time was a very conservative idiom, there's something uniquely personal about his language, which I find just don't get tired of, you know. It's been with him for many decades now.
Yes. Have you played most of the solo repertoire?
I've played all the 14 sonatas except for 2.
Right.
I've played all the concertos, I've played all the chamber music, and all the short pieces, so yes, quite a lot.
Yes.
It's not all of the songs, but which are as great as any of his music, but that's just for lack of opportunity.
Do you have a particular practice regime?
Well, probably not anymore. I used to, you know, I mean, obviously it used to be the first thing I did every day, you know. If I wasn't going somewhere, I was to sit down with the piano. Now I tend to practice for what I have to do.
You're a professor of piano at the Royal Academy. What is it about teaching you love, and how's your teaching evolved, do you think, over the years?
Well, I just enjoy it so much because I don't really have a method of teaching. You know, I listen to what the kids do, well, I say kids, the big kids.
Yes.
You know,
Advanced students.
Try and help them to do it better, actually. I've never really taught children, actually, and I do acknowledge that that is where the real art of teaching begins, you know, because if somebody who turns up at conservatoire and they've been badly taught, obviously from a young age, it's very, very hard to unravel the problems which they have. But I really enjoy seeing, you know, what problems they have technically, and, you know, how I would approach it, or I say, why do they find this so difficult, you know, and I ask myself questions about my own playing, you know.
That's interesting, yeah. In
fact, you know, if I didn't play, I'm not sure I would want to teach very much. I just find the two things so very interrelated, yes.
I'm a huge Bartók fan, and I love your book, Bartók, Life and Times. And how did this come about? Because it's quite different from the Romantic repertoire. So do you love playing Bartók, or is it more of an academic interest?
No, I've always admired him as a composer, and I love his music, and I also admire him as a man. You know, he was an extraordinarily courageous individual. You know, he was not physically strong, but mentally and emotionally he was incredibly strong. You know, he took a stand against Hitler probably long before anybody else did, and also to the reactionary forces in his own country. He was just sort of a man we can all admire. I mean, you can't say this about every composer, actually. And that's one of the things which attracts him to him. But his music too is just so incredibly original and unique. You've only got to hear a few bars and you know that's Bartók.
Yes, yeah.
He's just an extraordinary man in every way.
Which venues have you enjoyed performing in?
Well, I suppose there are some halls where, if you're talking about the actual acoustics of venues, then there are some which linger in the memory. The small hall in St. Petersburg, particularly the Caird Hall in Dundee, actually. They're all old-fashioned shoeboxes, you know.
Yes.
But somehow you get this feeling that what you hear on the stage is exactly what they hear anywhere else in the hall, and I think that's the best compliment you can pay to any acoustic. I mean, there are many other very good halls, but I mean, those two just leap into the mind since you asked me the question.
What's your most treasured musical memory?
Oh, this one I didn't probably give enough thought to. Are you talking about my own performances or
any
things which I've been...
Things that have influenced you or inspired you?
Well, it's funny that, I mean, you know, when you go to a concert, sometimes there are some, but very few that you remember for years and years and years. And I suppose you don't really remember every nuance of the performance, but you remember the effect it had. I remember Konstantin Silvestri conducting the Flower of Ecstasy of Scriabin in the 70s, I should think. And I remember just going, I was dizzy, you know, the excitement after that.
Yes.
Almost every time I heard Annie Fisher play Gilels, I heard many recitals by him at the end of his life. One in particular, I suppose the first time I heard him actually is one of the ones which really still lingers in the memory. I can actually remember what he played.
I was going to say, you remember what he plays?
Whereas often you remember concerts having enjoyed them but not quite sure what they played.
Yeah, yeah. So what are your future plans?
Well, I have some recordings planned, and I'm getting quite old now, so I've reached the stage actually where, you know, when people ask me to play, I'm very happy, and if they don't ask me, I'm still quite happy, so that's fine too. The last date in my diary is actually March of next year, and so we'll see what happens after that, but for the next 12 months at least, I'm pretty busy.
Yeah. What does playing the piano mean to you?
What does it mean to me? That is a difficult question. I think probably it's access to music, you know. Liszt famously said, you know, my 10 fingers can represent the 100 players of an orchestra. And of course that's not quite true, even in this case, but it is true that you have access to everything. When I was a kid, I used to play through operas, you know, I knew Otello almost by heart when I was 16, you know, just for playing through vocal scores.
Get to know the orchestra.
And I think that's what it meant to me originally. And then, of course, as I became more professional, I became more interested in the finer points, shall we say, of actually mastering the instrument, trying to find new things that it could do that I hadn't discovered before. And still do, I still do that, you know, I find something fascinating about the instrument, different instruments too, what you can persuade them to do.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.